Hey guys, it's Matt Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about another big pre-modern tournament. This one was from March, I believe, and this one had like over 100 people. Things are so big now, so big. That's pretty cool. We got some interesting decks, interesting tech, so that's all real sweet. Of course, got some old favorites, all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, let's just get to it. Let's get to it. All right, first things first, we got the blue-white tide deck. Again, this is all pretty stock. Um, in the sideboard, we see a little bit of customization with the Cunning Wish targets. So things like Absorb or Submerge are a little different. But Aura Blast is one you might not have seen. It's one of the many millions of cantrips they printed in Invasion block. I don't know, everything just cantripped in Invasion, which was sweet. That was pretty cool. But um, things like Repulse and Exclude probably were a bit much. But anyways, um, so yeah, it's a cantripping demystify or whatever, lets you destroy an enchantment, so that's pretty good. And then of course you have things like Stifle against all sorts of numbers of different things, and Annul, right? Annul, very good against things that you don't want to resolve, say like defense grid, so where it'd be more difficult to remove the artifact or enchantment after it hits play. So yeah, Annul, very very good here, but everything else is pretty much what you would expect. All right, and now we have a mono blue tide deck, of course. Got the typical kind of quicksand, Mishra's Factory, Fairy Conclave, good stuff going on. Of course, got standstill for drawing cards, keg and disc for removal, bunch of card draw, things like that. A singleton for spike, which I'm a huge fan of. Definitely, when you get people with it, it's great. And then even when you don't have it, they typically have to play around it. Again, same sort of thing with days. Pretty funny stuff. I always like that. And a fairly typical kind of sideboard here. And of course, a main deck Masked Core, because Masked Core is still a pretty great creature in pre-modern. So yeah, there you go. And now we have, of course, Full English Breakfast. This is a fairly typical list from what I see. I guess Aura Shards might be maybe a little spicy. I can't remember if they run Aura Shards or not typically. So many one-ofs, it's hard to keep track of them all. But Aura Shards is the green-white enchantment from Invasion where creature comes into play, nukes an artifact or enchantment. So, it naturalizes something. Pretty sweet. I'm sure you guys all know what that is. It's a pretty powerful card in Commander, but yeah. Plague Spitter 2, I guess, is interesting. I guess if they really wanted to beat up on Winnie decks really badly. Not 100% sure, but it's interesting. So, anyways, um, real cool stuff here. But yeah, fairly typical list from what I see. All right, and again, another Tide Still list, all that kind of good stuff. Um, yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Sometimes it seems like, hopefully my memory isn't failing me, but sometimes I think they play Enlightened Tutor, sometimes not. I don't think it's like required or anything, but Enlightened Tutor, very powerful. Uh, Big fan of that card, of course. Being able to get, your Parallax Tide and Seal Cleansing combo. Obviously, getting stuff like Humility is a little better versus aggressive decks or some combo decks. So, yeah, pretty cool stuff. See the Singleton Prohibit, popular in a lot of different blue decks these days, because it still does stuff in the late game, whereas Mana Leak can oftentimes be dead, depending. So, yeah, pretty interesting card. Definitely a big fan of Prohibit. And nothing too weird here, though. Just a typical Tide Still kind of list. Now we have, of course, a Madness deck. This one's got some pretty wonky stuff going on. Since we put Survival in this deck, or I should say, since this guy put Survival in this deck, they decided to add the Phyrexian Devourer combo. with utilizing full wrath shapeshifter and Triskelion. Again, same sort of combo that you've seen, in Legacy. Obviously, in the full English breakfast decks, in Premodern, making a big shapeshifter with the Devour as the top card, and then getting Triskelion and discarding that, and then just killing your opponent with all the counters on it. So pretty cool, pretty cool. And of course, you just have the regular beatdown plan with Wild Mongrel and Basking Root Wall and Arrogant Worm and all that good stuff. So, yep, Survival is a nice card advantage too, because with Squee, it's very good. Obviously, it's an extra card a turn, but also Squee is very good with Careful Steady too, for obvious reasons. So, yep, and the sideboard's all pretty normal. Hailstorm, that is the green pyroclasm thing, I believe, from Ice Age or Alliances. I'd have to look it up. I think that's the instant speed green colorless pyroclasm. Maybe it has something to do with, like, I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I probably should have put a picture on here. Now I feel silly. Anyways, but yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Okay, and now we have basically a red-green survival advantage kind of thing, and just kind of a beatdown deck with Sky Shroud Elite and River Bows and stuff, but it goes a little bigger with things like Blastoderm and of course FTK and cool stuff like that. Of course, you got Anger. Anger is really sweet, and of course Call of the Herd. This is a great card for these kinds of decks because it's just awesome versus the control decks. Just two big boy threats, and these are good cards against the aggressive decks because they either trade or just stomp on stuff, and then they have to spend mana to kill it, and so it's great. It's great. So it's card advantage. It's also a threat. It's super sweet. Definitely one of my favorite cards in Premodern. But yeah, great stuff. And of course, in the sideboard, we have things like Spike Feeder, which is great for beating up on things like Sly and whatnot. So pretty cool stuff. Everything else looks pretty normal. FTK against anything with walls, that can be kind of annoying. Just other aggressive decks, of course. Anything with a bunch of small, mid-sized creatures, FTK is great against those decks. So, yep, and we even have some nice ramp with Priest of Titania and Anger, and just a lot of really cool stuff. So yeah, good stuff here. Good stuff here. All right, now we got a weird one. Now, I'm not 100% sure why this person decided to not play the Stifles main deck and then play Reality Ripple main deck instead. Obviously, Stifle is a little bit more, it has other uses, right? It's more utility. But Reality Ripple, however, can save your Dreadnought, and protect it, which is worth something. So that's pretty cool. And of course, you can, I guess, always side in the Stifles, although I imagine those are for just as a generic sideboard card against things like Pernicious Deed, obviously. Pretty interesting. I don't know 100% why they have this split, but that's okay. That's okay. Reality Ripple, Vision Charm still do what you need them to do to put your Dreadnought into play. You got all your counter magic, and of course, you have additional threats in Fairy Conclave and Mishra's Factory. And of course, card draw and standstill. So pretty cool. Disc too, again, that's great. Although you don't really need to clear the board because basically nothing can stand up to Dreadnought. So outside of, like, I don't know, a Goblin Tinker or something. But anyways, yeah, interesting sideboard. I guess Rainbow of Freet's an interesting one if you really want to go harder on, like, the actual draw go kind of stuff. That's a pretty cool win condition that basically is very difficult to deal with. But yeah, interesting stuff here. But mostly a lot of the stuff we've come to expect, except Reality Ripple. That's one I had not seen before. So that's interesting tech. All right, and now we have the standstill lightning rift. So the lightning rift being the cycling enchantment, from Onslaught, and yeah, it's kind of like a counter burn thingy. Um, things like spark spray, miscalculation, great cycling cards. So when you cycle into lightning rift, you don't break the standstill, so you can kill stuff under standstill or burn your opponent out. That's really cool. And of course, Lonely Cave and Forgotten Sandbar. Lonely Sandbar and Forgotten Cave. I just got those mixed up. Anyways, the cycle lands, those things. Lots of really good stuff here. Even a Complicate, which, dang it, I should have put a picture here. I'm sorry about that. Complicate is a 3 mana, blue and 2 colorless for mana leak. And you can cycle it for a blue and 2 colorless, I think, to force spike something, and then draw a card, of course. So that's pretty cool. Definitely a really sweet card from Onslaught. I always like that card a lot. And yeah, it looks like the sideboard's all just normal stuff. Elemental Blast, Annul, Phyrexian Furnace, Overload, Slice Dice. Good stuff here. Good stuff here. It's land still. And that's all there is to it. Nothing weird here, just the same old stuff. All right, and now we have a less committed to survival madness deck. Survival just being another discard outlet, which is still pretty good, I think. Yep. But also Frantic Search, a couple Frantic Search is pretty good. Obviously very good with something like Roar of the Worm. Or excuse me, not Roar of the Worm, Arrogant Worm. Got some nice tutor targets, Wonder, Waterfront Bouncer, of course the Squee. Very cool stuff there. So yeah, let's see. Oh, and sideboard Mana War and Gilded Drake. Very powerful cards. Good stuff. And now we have Mono White Control. This is certainly a pretty unusual deck, although it doesn't play anything super unusual for the most part. Things that we would associate with Mono White Control. We got them all over this deck. Enlightened Tutor, Plow, Exalted Angel, things like that. But there are a couple wonky cards. We have Urza's Blueprints, definitely a pretty sweet card if you really need to draw cards and you can produce a bunch of mana. This deck will totally appreciate it. So definitely a pretty interesting one of to tutor for late game to just draw a bunch of cards, even though it's, basically 12 mana to draw 2 cards. Oh boy, but it's a lot better, the more turns the game goes on, of course, as a control deck certainly wants that to happen, so it's a little bit better, later on in the game. And Temple of the False God. This is one of the cards I hated the most playing Commander because it always bit you in the butt, and yeah, it was so difficult to get this thing to activate sometimes. But here we have 25 lands, 4 Eternal Dragon, land tax or whatever. So we have a lot of ways to get a bunch of lands and get these temples online. Of course, they're great with Decree of Justice too. So yeah, I mean, just real good in general. It's a pain-free ancient tomb, so that's worth building around. So yeah, real cool stuff here. Big fan. Very cool looking. Sideboard is typical hosers you're gonna see. Artifacts, enchantments for Enlightened Tutor, Wrath of God, for more hate, against those nasty creature decks. Orm's Chant, of course, against combo decks and control decks and stuff, and so on and so forth. So yep, pretty cool stuff here. All right, and now we have basically a kind of counter burn-ish Tide deck with, of course, Shard Phoenix, who we've talked about quite a bit before. Yeah, this is pretty sweet. I like the Minerals Disc, big fan of that. Of course, you have the Chain of Vapor, Parallax Tide combo. Shard Phoenix against any of the Weenie decks, just a great finisher too, of course. And in the sideboard, we just have all sorts of cool stuff. Some Cunning Wish cards like Bolt, Mana Short, Hibernation, of course, Blue Elemental Blast, Annul, Shattering Pulse, Stifle, etc., etc., etc. And of course, some good cards to board in like Phyrexian Furnace against graveyard decks, or decks with a little bit of recursion, so you can eat away at that with Phyrexian Furnace. All in all, pretty sweet, but a lot of what we would kind of come to expect for these blue-red Tide control decks, so very cool stuff, very cool stuff. All right, and now we have basically the Parfait deck, but of course this one has the Oath of Druid stuff. Pretty much more or less what we'd expect from this deck. Nothing weird here. The only thing that's a little unusual is the Iridescent Angel as an Oath target. Very sweet against things like, well, Swords to Plowshares and any creature removal or all sorts of targeted nastiness. Of course, doesn't do anything to Iridescent Angel. Very cool. And I guess the Black Vice main deck and sideboard, that's not that weird. That's a pretty powerful card against the control decks, since they can't really empty their hand against you very well. Vice is very strong there. So yeah, that's pretty much why it's included. So that's an interesting card, but not too out of the ordinary, I would say. And now we have Full English Breakfast. Same old stuff, except we also have the Phyrexian Dreadnought. So the Stifle Dreadnought thing, and of course the regular Full English Breakfast stuff. So that's pretty cool. I think, yeah, I think in general it's definitely advantageous to have these additional combos sort of just jammed in, mostly just because it just makes it harder to hate you out. I mean, again, there is always the issue of drawing the wrong cards at the wrong time, but at least Stifle is, you can do something with it, right? Stifle has a bunch of different uses, countering triggered abilities, special land activations, etc., etc. And of course, Dreadnought is, well, you can have him and discard him, and then to beat down with a Shapeshifter. That's kind of neat. I mean, that's a cool thing. But anyways, but yeah, so I think jamming the combos together, definitely pretty sweet. We got Crater Hellions, another way to wipe the board. That's pretty sweet. Again, obviously something you tutor out with survival. More survival targets in the sideboard. Nothing too wonky. E-Plagues, Hydroblast, cool stuff like that. So, yeah, there you go. And now we have something pretty interesting. Well, not super interesting because you've probably seen this before. It's just Dead Guy Ale, of course, just white-black, mid-range kind of thing. But it does play one of my favorite cards from Apocalypse is Death Grasp. I saw this and I was like, oh, it's such a simple card. You just pay a bunch and you deal a bunch and you gain a life. Like that's great. I love life gain, back in the day. So I was a huge fan of this card. Very, very cool. Liked it a lot. So sweet. Big fan. And of course, another card I really like in these kind of mid-range control-ish, control-E sort of decks is Haunting Echoes. Haunting Echoes being just such a huge bomb in the mid to late game. After you've destroyed a bunch of their stuff and taken out a bunch of their cards, Haunting Echoes oftentimes acts like an alternate win condition, ending the game sometimes immediately. So very, very cool card, very powerful card, but nothing else here that's too weird. We of course have Insidious Dreams, which is not super wonky. Obviously, with Phyrexian Arena, you can draw those cards, 2 of them immediately. So that's pretty cool, and you can discard stuff that's less good late game. So think like Duress, when they don't have anything in their hand or whatever. So yeah, that's actually a kind of an interesting sort of interaction. So you don't have, and of course, obviously after board, you can get your 1-ofs and stuff in your sideboard. So that's pretty interesting too. So yep. Oh, also Plague Spitter too, another card showing up more against the weenie decks. Definitely pretty strong there. So big fan of Plague Spitter. So yeah, there you go. Oh, the mana base too, again, pretty good, pretty good. I feel like you want like maybe another swamp. Cut of Plains for another swamp, because you really want your Tainted Fields to be turned on Otherwise, they're just colorless lands. That doesn't really work. But yeah, always like to err on the side a little bit more. But again, yeah, you get 2 City Brass, 2 Tainted Field. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So, yep, there you go. And of course, the winning deck is a tarragon, where it's kind of got like this threshold thing going on too. Um, but obviously, mulch very good in this kind of deck because it gives you more lands. Obviously, like to ramp to an Armageddon or to recover from an Armageddon or just to get more lands that do things like Wasteland, Nantuko Monastery, Core Haven, stuff like that. That kind of stuff is pretty cool. So mulch pretty powerful here. Of course, again filling up your graveyard for your werebears and stuff. Of course, in the sideboard we've got some interesting things like bind, kind of like a cantripping stifle sort of thing, but only counters activated abilities. And of course, Humble as just another additional piece of removal in addition to Swords to Plowshares. Definitely a really cool card I like quite a bit. And of course, the rest of the kind of things that we would expect in a green-white deck sideboard. Nothing weird there. Brave Revelation, of course, is a nice card that plays well with Mulch and things like that. Enlightened Tutor to fetch out all your things. Gigapede is pretty cool because it plays well with Mulch, and it's a really powerful card against the control decks in longer games. So pretty sweet there. Cycling lands, all sorts of great stuff. And of course, the deck is, like I said, because it's more of a threshold bent, it's going to be more aggressive. So things like Savannah Alliance is pretty sweet here. Weathered Wayfarer, of course, I've talked about a million times, but again, Wayfarer and Fetches and Wasteland is a very powerful combo. Of course, something like Rift's Grove plays pretty well with that too. So that's super sweet. Also good with Dust Bowl too. That's pretty interesting. Yeah. So this is definitely a really sweet deck. It's just a really solid deck. It's got some great ramp, with Mox Diamond, cool, powerful tricks and tutors, powerful endgame with Armageddon. Huge Armageddon fan. That's the only thing I don't like about the deck. I want to play 4 Armageddon. I'd play 61 cards if I had to. I love playing Armageddon. I'll play 4, dang it. So, but yeah, definitely really cool stuff here. I like it quite a bit. So yeah, that was the winning deck, the super coolest deck. Lots of cool tech, of course. It seems like every deck that wins always has more cool new tech. So, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope it made you smile a little bit. Think about all the cool stuff. You know, I did. I loved it. Oh, these things are always super fun for me. So, yeah, there you go. So thanks for stopping by, guys, and I really hope you have a great day.